I didn't expect to see her there that morning. Not at the little coffee shop tucked between the laundromat and the corner pharmacy. It wasn't the kind of place you imagined running into someone like her. She didn't belong to that space. Not with the chipped tables, the hum of the soda machine in the back, the tired barista who spelled my name wrong every time. But there she was, my friend's mom. Sitting, she looked up, and when her eyes found me, she smiled in that way older people do, not careless, but considered, like she'd chosen to let me in on something. I could say the same about you, she replied. Her fingers circled the rim of her mug. No rings. I noticed that before I even realized I was noticing. I ordered the usual. Medium drip, no sugar. The barista rolled his eyes like he already knew. When I turned back, she was still watching me. You always get the same thing, she said. You remember that? She tilted her head, almost amused. You always showed up at our house with the same thermos. Hard not to. I sat down without asking. Not across from her, but at the table beside hers, angled just enough that our chairs almost touched. I fiddled with the sleeve on my coffee cup, tearing the edge without realizing it. She didn't seem to mind the closeness. How's your son? I asked. Her expression shifted, just a little. Not sadness exactly, but something quieter. Busy. He doesn't come by much. I nodded. I knew that already. My friend was more absent than present these days, chasing jobs, women, anything but home. We talked around the silence for a while. Weather, books left unfinished, the way this coffee shop always smelled faintly like detergent from the laundromat next door. She laughed once, softly, when I told her the barista still couldn't get my name right. It wasn't a loud laugh. More like an exhale, the kind you don't hear unless you're close. I kept stealing glances at her hands. The way she held her mug, steady, deliberate. My eyes flicked down more than once, and I had to force myself to look away before it was obvious. There was a warmth between us, though neither of us reached for it directly. It hummed beneath the ordinary. After a while, she glanced at her phone, then slipped it face down on the table. I should go, she said, but she didn't move right away. Her coat stayed folded, untouched. I nodded, though my chest felt heavier than it should have. I didn't want her to leave. Not yet. She stood finally, sliding her arms into her coat. Before walking past, she leaned just slightly toward me, close enough that I caught the faint scent of her perfume, something floral but worn in, like it had lived on her skin for years. Her voice was low, almost secretive. This stays between us. And then she was gone. I sat there with my cooling coffee, the torn sleeves scattered on the table, wondering what exactly she meant, and why the words wouldn't leave me. I didn't think I'd see her again so soon. But 3 days later, I was standing in the hallway outside her apartment, holding a plastic bag of groceries I'd carried up for her. She'd bumped into me at the building entrance, keys fumbling in her hand, and before I knew it, I was offering to help. Her place looked almost exactly as I'd remembered from high school. Framed photos, plants by the window, a soft lamp in the corner that made everything feel warmer than it should. Only, now it felt different. Quieter, like a room that had been waiting too long. You can just put those on the counter, she said. I did, trying not to notice the stack of unopened mail, the empty wine glass on the sink. She brushed her hair back with one hand, and for a second, I imagined what it would be like if I belonged here, if I was more than just someone passing through with grocery bags. Thanks, she added. Her voice was softer in her own kitchen, without the clatter of coffee cups around us. I shrugged. It's nothing, but it didn't feel like nothing. She put the kettle on, asked if I wanted tea. Now it was 2 mugs of tea between us, and silence that carried too much meaning. She broke it first. You know, I don't really cook much anymore. I looked up. Why not? She smiled faintly, not at me, but at the thought. Cooking for one feels different. Pointless sometimes. She stirred her tea even though she hadn't added sugar. When you kids used to come over, I always made too much food. I liked the noise, the mess, the way the house felt alive. Her words sat heavy between us. I wanted to say something, to fill the silence with reassurance, but I couldn't. Instead, I just nodded, fingers tracing the rim of my mug. I remembered how she'd stand in the doorway back then, half listening to our games, pretending not to watch. She'd ask if we wanted more soda, if we'd eaten enough. And I remembered, though I never said it, how I sometimes looked at her longer than I should have, before I knew what that looking meant. Now, sitting across from her, I wondered if she ever noticed. "It's strange," she said after a moment, "seeing you here without him." "I could leave," I offered, half a joke, half a test. Her eyes flicked up at me. "That's not what I meant." I laughed, too quickly. "I know." But my chest tightened anyway. The kettle clicked again, though it was already empty. The silence pressed in, and I tried not to think about the difference between us. The years, the roles, the unspoken rules. My friend's mom, 40-something, lived a whole life already. And me, still figuring out mine. But then she shifted in her chair, resting her chin lightly on her hand. And for a moment, she didn't look like someone older. She just looked tired. Human. "You ever feel like people don't really see you?" she asked suddenly. The question startled me. I thought of the unsent texts in my phone, the way conversations with friends trailed off before they ever got close to anything real. I thought of nights staring at the ceiling, replaying words I'd never said out loud. "Yeah," I admitted. "A lot." She held my gaze longer than she should have. Then she looked down, almost embarrassed she'd asked. I wanted to tell her that I saw her. Right then, more clearly than anyone else. But the words stuck in my throat, so I just let the silence stretch. She reached for her mug at the same time I did, and our hands brushed against each other. Just skin on skin, a fleeting touch. But it startled me. The warmth of it, the way she didn't pull back right away. We both laughed, quietly, like it was nothing. Like it was only about reaching for tea. But I knew it wasn't. Later, walking back to my own apartment, I kept replaying that small touch in my mind. The brush of her hand. The steadiness in her voice when she asked if I ever felt unseen. And I thought, I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me that I didn't mean to linger outside her door. It just happened. I'd heard her laugh through the wall. Faint, almost muffled, and for some reason it stopped me. I hadn't heard her laugh like that in years. When she finally opened the door, she looked surprised. Not upset, just caught off guard. "You again," she said, though her voice softened halfway through. I held up the box of takeout in my hand. "Extra food." Thought maybe. I trailed off. Her eyes flicked to the bag, then back to me. A pause, just long enough to make my chest tighten, and then she stepped aside. "Come in." The kitchen light was dim, only one bulb working. She set out plates without asking if I'd stay. Like it was already understood. We ate quietly. She asked about my classes, my work. I answered, though my eyes kept drifting to the curve of her wrist, the way she leaned on one elbow, her hair falling loose around her face. At one point, she caught me staring. Neither of us said anything. Halfway through the meal, there was a knock on the door. Sharp, quick. Her son's voice. "My friend." "Mom? You home?" My stomach dropped. She froze, spoon halfway to her mouth. Then, almost too calmly, she whispered, "Stay quiet." We waited. The knock came again, then footsteps fading down the hall. She exhaled slowly, setting her spoon down. "He doesn't need to know you're here." Something in her tone, not shame exactly, but something close to it, cut deeper than I expected. I nodded, trying to swallow the knot in my throat. "Yeah, of course." The room felt smaller after that. Every sound too loud. I folded the edge of my napkin until it tore in half. She pushed her plate aside, leaning back. Her gaze stayed on me longer than before, like she was searching for something she couldn't quite name. "You shouldn't spend so much time here," she said finally. The words hit harder than I thought they would. "You don't want me to?" She shook her head. "It's not that." Her fingers drummed once against the table, then stopped. "It's complicated." Silence again. The kind that hums in your chest. I wanted to tell her I didn't care, that I liked being here, with her, but my throat closed around the words. Instead, I reached for her plate, sliding it toward me like I was going to clear it. Our hands touched again, longer this time. Neither of us moved. Her eyes flicked to mine, held there. For a second, it felt like the air shifted, the kind of moment that could tip either way. She leaned in, just slightly, close enough that I felt her breath, warm against my skin. My pulse was loud in my ears. Then she pulled back, so quickly it almost hurt. "We shouldn't," she whispered. But her eyes said something else. And for the first time, I wondered which part of her I was supposed to believe. It was late afternoon when I ran into her again, outside this time. She was coming back from the pharmacy, a paper bag tucked under her arm, the kind that crinkled too loudly in the quiet street. We walked together without saying we would, side by side, our shadows stretching long across the pavement. She asked about my week. I told her about work, though the words felt thin, just something to fill the air. She nodded, but I could tell she wasn't really listening. Her mind was somewhere else. We ended up at the little park 2 blocks away, the one with the tired benches and cracked pavement under the swings. She sat down first, setting the bag beside her, and I followed. The silence pressed down heavier than usual. "You're quiet," I said finally. Her eyes stayed on the trees, bare branches against a pale sky. I was thinking. About what? A pause. Too long. She shifted, pulling her coat tighter. "About how this looks." I swallowed. "Looks to who?" Another pause. "This one sharper." "To him." "To anyone." My chest tightened. "We're just sitting." She turned then, looking at me straight on. "You know it's not just that." The words hit harder than I expected. I opened my mouth, closed it again. My fingers twisted the hem of my sleeve, a nervous habit I thought I'd grown out of. She sighed, leaning back against the bench. "You're his friend. You're half my age. And yet," she cut herself off. "And yet." My voice cracked. Her lips pressed together, as though the words themselves hurt to keep inside. I couldn't stand it anymore. "I think about you," I said quietly. "More than I should." She didn't flinch, didn't move at all, just sat there, her breath visible in the cold air, her eyes fixed on me like she'd been waiting for the admission all along. When she finally spoke, her voice was low. "You shouldn't say that." "I know." But the truth was already there, heavy between us. She rubbed her hands together, as though to warm them, though I suspected it was just something to do. "Do you have any idea how complicated this is?" I laughed, but it wasn't really a laugh. More like a release of air. "All I do is think about how complicated it is." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The sound of traffic hummed in the distance, muffled. A child laughed faintly somewhere near the swings. Ordinary noises that didn't match the weight of what sat between us. Then she leaned forward, elbows on her knees, staring at the ground. "Sometimes I feel like I don't exist anymore. Like people look through me." She hesitated, her voice faltering just slightly. "And then you come along. And it's dangerous. Because you see me." My chest ached. I wanted to reach for her hand, to hold her still, to keep her from retreating. But I didn't. "Instead," I said, "maybe that's why I can't stop coming around." Her breath caught, just barely, but I heard it. She looked at me again, and for the first time, I didn't see caution in her eyes. I saw something else. Something raw. The silence stretched. Long enough that the possibility of it, of us, became unbearable. I leaned in. Just a fraction. Not enough to close the distance, but enough that she felt it. I know she did, because she didn't pull back right away. Her lips parted like she might say something, but no words came. Instead, her eyes searched mine, wide, unguarded. And in that thin line of space between us, I felt the question rise, the one neither of us dared to voice. Are we really about to do this? The next week, she wasn't around. No sound through the wall. No footsteps in the hallway. Her door stayed closed, lights dim behind the blinds. I told myself I wouldn't notice, but I did. Every day. On the 4th night, I caved and knocked. Once. Twice. Nothing. Her name sat heavy on my tongue, but I didn't say it out loud. By the 5th day, I ran into her outside the building. She looked different. Pulled together, almost polished, in a way that didn't match the grocery bags in her hands. Hair pinned back, lipstick, a coat I hadn't seen her wear before. She smiled, but it was the wrong kind of smile, the kind you use to close a door without slamming it. "Busy week," she said, before I could even ask. "Had things to take care of." I nodded, though my chest tightened. We walked together up the stairs. Her hands stayed busy with her keys, the bags, anything that kept her from looking at me. "Everything okay?" I asked finally. She paused, just for a second. "Yeah, of course." But her voice carried something flat, a practiced evenness. Inside her apartment, the air felt different too. A jacket hung on the back of a chair, not hers. A man's. I noticed it immediately, though I tried not to. She saw my eyes shift. "It's nothing," she said quickly. Too quickly. My ex stopped by, just to drop some things. I wanted to believe her. I almost did, but she stayed guarded, movements precise, smile fixed. At one point she reached for her phone, typed something, then deleted it before setting the device face down. I wanted to ask who she'd been writing to. I didn't. Instead, I told her about a paper I was behind on. About the job I might not keep. About nothing that mattered, really. And the whole time, I could feel the distance widening, like the room itself was pushing me out. Finally, I stood. I should go. Her eyes flicked up, startled. Then she nodded. Probably best. The words stung more than I expected. That night, back in my own apartment, I stared at my phone for an hour. I typed a message, "I miss you." Just say something. Anything. I didn't send it. The screen glowed in the dark, lighting the shape of my hesitation. I thought about the jacket on her chair. The lipstick. The way she said "probably best." And I realized I wasn't heartbroken. Not exactly. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. It was raining the night. She opened her door again. Not a storm, just the steady kind of rain that made the whole building sound hollow. I hadn't planned on knocking. I'd only stopped outside her door because the hallway light was out, and I didn't feel like walking into the dark. But then the door opened. She stood there barefoot, a sweater hanging loose at her shoulders. She looked like she'd been deciding whether to call someone and never did. "Hi," I said. My voice came out thin. She hesitated. Then, quietly, "Do you want to come in?" The apartment was dim, only one lamp on. The jacket from before was gone. No signs of anyone else. Just her. We sat at the kitchen table, like always. 2 mugs of tea between us, steam curling and fading before it reached the air. Neither of us touched our cups. Finally, she spoke. "I don't know if I can do this." My chest tightened. "Do what?" "This, whatever this is." Her hands wrapped around her mug, though she wasn't drinking. "You make me feel like I'm 20 again. But I'm not. And you're not supposed to be here." The silence that followed pressed hard against my ribs. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. "I don't care how it looks," I said, though my voice shook. The words caught. "I just don't want to pretend I don't think about you." She laughed softly, not mocking, just tired. "Do you know how reckless that sounds?" "Yeah," I admitted. "But it's true." Her eyes searched mine, like she was waiting for me to take it back. I didn't. Instead, she leaned back, covering her face with one hand. "You're supposed to be his friend." "I know. You're supposed to be young enough to start over." "I know that too." She lowered her hand, eyes glistening though no tears fell. "Then why do you keep coming back?" I swallowed, throat tight. "Because you see me. And I don't get that anywhere else." The words sat heavy. Final. She closed her eyes, breathing slow, steady, like she was weighing everything all at once. The rules, the risks, the lines already blurred. Then, finally, she opened them. Her gaze softer than it had been in weeks. "I'm scared," she said. I nodded. "Me too." The rain outside grew louder, tapping against the window like it wanted in. We sat in the quiet, everything unspoken still between us, but something had shifted. Slowly, she reached across the table. Not far, just enough that her fingers brushed the back of my hand. A touch, nothing more. But it felt like a choice. I turned my palm up, letting her rest there. Neither of us moved beyond that. No rushing, no crossing the final line. Just her hand in mine, steady, fragile, real. After a while, she let out a shaky breath. Almost a laugh. "Okay." And I knew that was all I'd get tonight. But it was enough that it didn't happen all at once. There was no single night where we crossed a line and never looked back. It was slower, quieter than that, like rain soaking into the ground, steady enough that you don't notice the change until the grass looks greener. Weeks passed. Some days I saw her, some days I didn't. She went back to her routines, morning walks, groceries in a canvas bag, tea in the evenings. I went back to mine, work shifts, classes, half-finished texts I never sent. But little by little, the distance we had once wrapped ourselves in thinned. One Saturday, I found her at the park. Same cracked pavement, same tired bench. She was already sitting there, coat tucked close, watching the trees. I almost walked past, but she saw me and smiled. Not the polite kind. The real one. Sit, she said. So I did. We didn't talk much at first. Just sat there, shoulders almost touching, listening to the faint squeak of the swings in the wind. She offered me her thermos of tea, still too hot, still too strong. I teased her about it, like I had before, and she nudged me lightly with her elbow. It felt easy. Earned. After that, it became a kind of pattern. We'd meet in small places. The bench, her kitchen, the hallway at 8:47 a.m. when she was locking her door and I was pretending to run late. Little overlaps that stitched the days together. Sometimes she'd make coffee just the way I liked, black, no sugar, and set it on the counter without saying anything. Other times, I'd bring her something small, a pastry, a plant, a book I thought she'd like. She never made a big deal out of it, but I always noticed the way she left them around, like they'd become part of her space. We didn't talk about what we were. We didn't need to. It was there in the way she leaned into me when we walked home from the store. The way I found myself at her door more often than not. One night, months later, we sat again at her kitchen table. The lamp hummed softly. The rain was back, steady against the window. She poured tea into 2 mugs, slid one toward me. This feels different now, she said. I looked at her. Different how? She shrugged, but her smile gave her away. Less complicated. Or maybe I just stopped fighting it. I didn't answer right away. Just wrapped my hands around the mug, letting the steam rise. Me too, I said finally. There was no declaration, no dramatic confession. Just the truth sitting there between us, as steady as the rain. Later, when I left, she walked me to the door. Before I stepped out, she touched my hand the way she had that night weeks ago, soft, deliberate. Only this time, she didn't let go right away. Her eyes met mine. Okay, she whispered. I nodded. Okay. And that was it. Not an ending. Not a beginning. Just us. Quiet, unspoken, real. Sometimes, when I think back to the very first time, the coffee shop, her coat folded over the chair, the way she said this stays between us, I realize she was right. It did stay between us. And it still does.